Do we have to say welcome to my channel every time? I don't know. Okay, one thing I've noticed is I gesticulate a lot, clearly, so I want you guys to be able to see my hands because it's kind of just like you're seeing my fingers, and that's, I don't know, that seems weird to me, like you're not seeing the full effect of how much I move everything. Anyway, the camera's that way. Okay, I want to talk about a comment I got while I was writing one time that has kind of stuck around in my head because I feel like I don't necessarily need to respond to that person, aka troll, but I do think that it's something worth talking about in general. So I had written a piece of poetry on Medium, and it gotten curated under poetry, and it was like pretty old. I think I'd written it 6 to 8 months ago. I shouldn't use the word old. It was vintage. Yes. Okay. But anyway, I got this notification, and if you are privy to the struggles of being a woman writer, when you go to click on your notifications, sometimes it almost feels like just muscles clenching and hearts kind of like, what am I about to read? What kind of, anything ranging from just good old mansplaining to like vitriol, where it's like, how dare you have this opinion, go burn, or something like that, and you know, etc., very terrible. So I was like, I got this comment, I should read it. So I read it, and he said something like, good thought, the commenter, something like good thought, but he said this isn't actually a poem. And while I was reading it, I was, in my head, when I'm thinking about poetry, I'm not really thinking so much from this like very super emotional place of like, how could you say this to me? It's my writing. Here's why. I know I'm a poet. You can't take it away from me. I come from a family of poets. I grew up in mushairas. Okay, so what that means is in Pakistani society, there are these gatherings, also Indian, I think generally South Asian societies, there are these gatherings where you can come together, a bunch of poets and writers come together and they read their work, and it's a very community-centered experience. So I knew that was something that was a part of my life ever since I can remember, you know, being conscious. So it doesn't really faze me so much, that notion of, am I a poet, am I a poet, am I a poet? It's sometimes actually, for me personally, it's like, I wish I wasn't such a poet, because like there will be ideas that come into my head and I'm doing something else and I'm like, well, I guess I have to go find a piece of paper to write this down on now, or lose it forever. Anyway, this is the only reason I say this is because I think in our society, in our culture, we expect women to be very like, I'm like kind of good at this, or like I'm kind of, no. If you're great at something, be great at it. We have weaponized humbleness against women, and it's not okay. It's just not. That doesn't, when somebody says they're great at something, it doesn't mean they don't have room for improvement. Of course I have room for improvement. I workshop my poems constantly. In a later video someday, I will tell you that I got in trouble for workshopping my poems, but you know, that's a conversation for another time. In this video, we were talking about a comment. I had to give you all of this other context back to that person. So he says to me, it's not a poem. And I'm thinking of it with my analytical brain, like, maybe I didn't use enough literary devices, maybe I didn't do this, maybe I didn't do that. And there was this feeling inside of me, maybe I should respond and engage with this person. And then I was like, wake up, Rebecca. Number one, you're busy, like you don't have time for this. And number two, where does this person get off like telling you that what you're writing is not a poem, right? Who is this self-declared gatekeeper, right? For so long, the literature that we consume, the art that we consume, has had a certain demographic of gatekeepers, right? And that's changing slowly, but it's changing. But what I'm not going to do is try to justify my writing to some stranger who has taken it upon himself to insult me online. So I hit his response. Maybe I blocked him. I don't remember. I just remember being like, I don't like this. This is an eyesore. I would not want to see this on my profile. Bye. You know, it's one of the best tools I think Medium has is this hide response option. I think it's relatively new. The reason it's so great is because you can silence people just like, you know, marginalized people have been silenced for just wanting to live. Now we have the opportunity to silence people who are trying to make it hard for us just to like be people expressing ourselves. Just regular people who want to put our art into the world. Why is that so offensive? I don't know. But anyway, after I gave it a little bit of thought, here's the thing. Poetry is subjective. I have read very long pieces by Polish poets, by South Asian poets that are tremendously impactful. And I have read globally very small pieces by poets, maybe 2 lines, maybe 1 line. Perhaps you've heard of Nayar Wahid. I hope I said her name right. Please let me know if I didn't. But she writes very short poetry and it's extremely impactful. It hits you right here and right here. So for anyone who's trying to tell you that poetry has to be this way or poetry has to be that or what you're doing isn't poetry, whatever. Just write your poem. Anyway, bye.